Welcome back, everybody. As most countries' business sectors still find themselves trying to deal with the wrath of the pandemic, there might be an understandable aversion to future planning. And according to the Year Ahead Predictions 2021 research paper by Kearney Africa, now is exactly the time for such planning to take place. And to speak to us more about this study and some of the biggest business trends to look out for this year, we are joined via Zoom by their Managing Director, Theo Sibiya. Theo, a very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sibiya, and thanks very much for having me.
Let's start with why now is the right time for businesses to not throw in the towel, and why effective forecasting is needed now more than ever.
Well, Sibiya, I think we can all agree that last year was a year like no other. The pandemic really threw things upside down, and more now than ever do we need to take stock, look at what the future holds for us so that we can make sure that we're well positioned to take advantage of it as the business community.
All right. Now speak to us about these 5 areas which will shape the operating environment as the world begins to move beyond COVID-19.
Yeah, Sibiya, so we spend quite a bit of time forecasting and trying to make sense of what the future holds. And so what's coming up in our view is 5 key trends around localization of global supply chains, the rise of green hydrogen, even here in South Africa, is taking hold very significantly. The continued focus on food security, which is very important, especially for the African continent. But also, and this is one of the key trends which has been emerging for a while now, that the digital impact and the rise of what we call digital nomads is on the rise, as well as making sure that we are keeping a close eye on the misinformation wars where people are spreading a lot of information to shape how we think and how we live, but a lot of misinformation as well at the same time, which is going to shape our lives in quite a significant way in all aspects of our lives.
Great point there. And this report also shows that, planning will have sort of a disproportionate impact on shaping businesses in the year 2021 operating environment. Speak to us more about this.
So what we see is a kind of a world that's in a state of reassessing what the norm is. Everyone talks about the new normal. And we are saying there is no real new normal, but a normal. Right. And what that looks like is really around saying you've got a plan, which is still one of the fundamentals. You've got to make sure that you are aware of the key trends as we've identified, but also now be positioned to be a little bit more flexible and more agile. As we know, there's certain shocks that can affect your business. So, for example, in the past you had long, thin supply chains, supplying all sorts of operations, whether it be manufacturing or otherwise. Now you're going to think about alternative solutions that can be more adapted to a changed environment. So no longer having the thin supply chains, but looking at local manufacturing capability. This presents for a fantastic opportunity for local businesses to play more of a meaningful role in supporting businesses in South Africa, at least.
Now, Theo, let's talk about the predicted business opportunities that will emerge in multiple industries this year.
So if we talk about that, we would look at a couple of areas. So as I've mentioned, manufacturing is an area that we think presents significant opportunities for African and South African countries, because as I said, most supply chains in the past, before the pandemic, all led to China in some shape or form. And now when that was disrupted, it meant that businesses had to look for other alternative suppliers for their goods, which means there's an opportunity to produce for the local market and for the African market. We also think that with the rise of green hydrogen, more and more renewable-based businesses present significant opportunities. So looking at green, looking at climate change related businesses, looking at renewables like solar, like wind, all those become a fantastic business opportunity, as well as agriculture. So agriculture, when we look at the continued focus on food security, Africa is blessed with tracts and tracts of arable land that could be used to produce not only for the African continent, but to be a major supplier of food for the rest of the world. Now, the other area where we see significant opportunities in the technology space, we think there's opportunities for technology and attracting what's called digital nomads. If we can get our technology infrastructure right, then people, as you've seen, can work from almost anywhere in the world. So if we can get our technology infrastructure right, we can attract investment and we can attract skills and talent that can be applied in businesses in in other parts of the world. We're seeing a significant rise in that, and there's an opportunity both to leverage that, both in terms of tourism, but also in terms of creating work opportunities. And then, of course, if we look at then the misinformation battle, as I mentioned, here we really need to look very carefully at how we manage our media, and entities can be created to ensure that we're generating and we're addressing the misinformation that's out there. So there's a whole myriad of business opportunities that are being spawned by this shock that we've had to go through in this last couple of years.
Yeah, and another one of your predictions shows that many pandemic-driven changes are set to stay even after the virus is under control. Speak to us about what this means, especially for local businesses.
Indeed, and this is one of the key takeouts of our research. So much of what we've actually covered in our research would suggest that there were things that were happening already that have just been accelerated by the pandemic. So, for example, use of technology for virtual meetings, etc., and working from home. Those kind of trends had started a little bit, but have been accelerated, and they're more than likely going to stay. So we don't see a future where everyone works remotely, but we see a form of hybrid taking shape, where there will still be a need to have the physical office infrastructure where people can go, but that in of itself will change, because we will be creating more collaboration spaces as opposed to the offices that we knew in the past. So those kind of things we expect to stay. You'll also be aware that during the pandemic there were some winners and there were some losers, and that's a well-known fact. Many of the technology companies, such as the platform we're using today, Zoom, have experienced incredible growth, exponential growth. Much of the technology companies, your Microsofts, your Google, all these companies, and then obviously your digitally based companies like your Amazons also experience incredible growth. And so we expect those kind of technology companies to continue to spurn and to drive growth of many industries, and they're not going away anytime soon.
Yeah. Now, with the talk of a third wave expected to hit us, just how realistic are these predicted trends?
And yes, so Sibiya, you touch on a very important point, which is around the fact that many territories are experiencing the pandemic in different ways. Mm-hmm. You'll be aware South America is in the grip of a very severe second wave, and the third wave is not unlikely either. We sit here anxious about a third wave hitting us. Now, there's different predictions. We've got some models that have predicted that it should start late May, and other people have different models. And then there are other people who are saying maybe it's not going to be as severe as the second wave. No one can really tell exactly how that's going to affect us. That being said, we are aware that until we get our vaccination and the inoculation process complete, we remain vulnerable. Now, what does this mean for us from a business perspective? It means we need to continue to be vigilant and stick to the guidelines that have been provided by government in terms of how we look after each other and how we make sure we take all the necessary precautions. But we've also got to stay active, and business has got to continue. Business can't stop. Business needs to generate the returns, and industry needs to work so that you can actually create the funding required for the fiscus to be able to support the people of the country. So our view is find a way. Things actually have started working. I mean, people are used to using the technology platforms to make things happen and to continue and to deliver and to produce. So we need to continue to do that and find ways of keeping the economy alive, even during the third wave.
Now, Theo, just a quick question. As we rethink where business is done, it sort of creates the opportunity for organizations of all sizes, of all shapes, to sort of advance and achieve their goals and experience a much more flexible culture and reduce their carbon footprint, most importantly, and enhance diverse talent recruitment. So how does this paradigm shift enable us to do all of this?
Yes, so it's a little bit of an evolution of where things stand. So no one really can pinpoint, how everything is going to change. I mean, you touch on a really important point around organizational culture.
Yes.
And what does that mean in a virtual world, or the world that we find ourselves in? How do you shape it? What type of people do you bring into an organization now that they're not going to be interacting on a regular basis, face to face? So these things, have presented opportunities. Like you've said, in terms of reducing your carbon footprint and all those kind of things, but you have to think carefully around what kind of organization you want to build and how you build it, how you build cultural, symbols that people can relate to, can feel a sense of belonging, even though they're not in each other's lives on a regular basis like they used to. This would mean coming up with rituals that somehow bring you together and shape the culture. That's some of the things that we're seeing organizations experimenting with. We've also seen a rise in terms of making sure that people somehow are supported beyond the office walls. So looking at how do I make sure that now my workforce is working from home, that I ensure that they have a comfortable seat, they are well prepared, and they have all the tools and gadgets that are required to make them effective, but also that they're looking after their mental health. Because this has really been a shock to the human psyche in many respects. Working remotely, in as much as it's created opportunities for people to be at home, but it has put a lot of strain on people, and mental health related challenges we've seen as one of the key trends have been on the rise. So employers have an obligation to come closer to their employees and make sure that they're looking after them more. Where we will eventually land is hopefully, we will find some sort of equilibrium where we look after the lives of our employees, but we ensure that we continue to be productive.
All right, Theo, great chatting to you, man. Thank you so much for such a stimulating conversation. And I guess the most important thing is, companies should start looking at reshaping their strategy for business continuity and perhaps evaluating short-term liquidity. Thank you so much for your insights on this matter.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, that was Theo Sibiya. He is Kearney Africa's partner and managing director, and we've been in conversation with him about some of the biggest business trends to watch out for in the remainder of the year 2021. This is Morning Live on SABC News. Thank you so much for joining us.